to the program. Hello, I am Suren. There was a time when I was running two different parallel lines. You want to hear it? As it seemed with everything I was associated with. That will be interesting. I do not intend to crowd this space, as a lot more is already included in my books, but I will make a short mention of things. For instance, my journey to Egypt and to Peru with a so-called friend, this had been my only experience. Two different lines. We observed two different styles of personality, one deeply concentrating, thinking, visualizing, and the other questioning things painstakingly, perhaps to learn things from, or just to have something to become unbearably critical about. One who preferred peace and quiet to enable him towards creative thought, for he has already gone through that other system of being critical about things. The other crowding his and his companion's mind with utterly irrelevant issues of critical thought. When taking the culture currently known to us as being the yardstick, both travelers would represent the extreme ends of the scale. This was a journey which became naught else but a constant battlement. Even the flow of thought within one's mind was forced to function in parallel lines. On one side, I was to rediscover the ancient and current worlds, as with Egypt, for instance, and on the other, the earlier civilizations. I had to feel, sense, and touch the articles of antiquity directly, as I could not solely rely on the information given at the time of my journeying by the tour guides. I was to recall my history classes and research when spoken to by my friend Serapis Bey and others who some people consider to be nothing more than a fantasy. Yet I was not fantasizing, I was seeing it all, experiencing it directly. It was all there, all as real as the history of the Nile dwellers. I could now make comparisons, whilst at the same time remaining totally neutral without changing the subject, only questioning at times the authenticity of former teachings and discoveries I was subjected to. At the same time, I was to divide much of my time. I had to break away from the actual thoughts construed and memories recalled because I was often abruptly interrupted in order to answer totally irrelevant questions, apart from being verbally downgraded. Later I would pick up the broken pieces of thought and try to make sense of it all. Was I following a wrong method? Was I dreaming? My mind wanting to escape, my conscious self wanting to run away and disappear for a long while from the face of the public. What was the original plan of my journeying, anyway? Was it my person to be forever interrogated, shouted at, sworn at? Was it to be questioned why my friends such as Serapis Bey had left me to misery and want? My mind crowded. I had no choice, but put it all down, hopefully, to be able to assist someone else along the line. It was almost like this. On one side, I was trying to whistle a tune as it came to my mind, whilst having a little wash. It sounded so sad, I found that I was crying instead. On the other hand, one discovers that Europeans knew a lot more about the Egyptian and Sumerian civilizations. Although the secret of the ancient scriptures seemed to have been lost. One of the ancient historians I learned about was the Greek Herodotus. He was an important scholar and writer during 425 BC. He visited Egypt, observing and writing down his discoveries. He spoke about the Nile Delta and indicated that the pyramids were already very old during the times of the pharaohs. Much of his knowledge came from the Egyptian priests, and he described their religion, customs, festivals, usage of magic, and burial techniques. Later, it was proven that much of his knowledge was very reliable. Another historian, Diodorus, continued with the tradition left after Herodotus. Visiting Egypt around 61 BC. During the flourishing Roman rule, many more people visited the country. They usually arrived at the port of Alexandria and followed the Nile into Memphis, which was the capital of Egypt, built to the south of today's Cairo. They traveled all the way to Giza, Thebes, even into the distant Elephantine. Much of this ancient civilization, as well as the Sumer and Hittite, was destroyed during the first millennium AD. Many Christians regarded the ancient temples and monuments as being pagan and converted them into churches. During the 16th century, the country became a Turkish Ottoman province, and an emir is said to have not liked those ancient elements and used them as target practice for his artillery. Today, there are many mosques incorporated into those ancient temple sites. As you can see, my broken thoughts started then to stream again. Although I was unsure when were they to be broken. I remember while I was at the Lyceum, one of our favorite history teachers, Mr. Anwar Behnan Chapollio, told us that when Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt in 1798, he instigated a research program, and a year later in Rosetta, whilst they were trying to improve the coastal defenses against the British rulership, a stone was discovered, which was later passed to the British. Jean-François Champollion continually worked on that stone, which came to be known as the Rosetta Stone. He published a description of hieroglyphs in 1882 and became known as the father of Egyptology. And the Coptic Church has kept the ancient Egyptian language alive. There is much more to be said. But for now, I shall leave some of the other discoveries for a later time. In the meantime, I say, as I said before, I will be waiting here by the next episode. Until then, and further, keep smiling and be happy. Thank you.